This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome. Welcome to the February monthly partnership meeting of the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership. Good morning. My name is Heather McCarthy, and I am honored to serve as the Executive Director of SCDRP. I'm speaking to you today from Jacksonville, Florida. So it's hard to believe, but today marks exactly 100 days until the start of the hurricane season here in the Atlantic Basin. Yes, that's June 1st. I heard all of the emergency managers gasp. So, a persistent reminder as to why we are here as we work together to ensure that our region is ready and more resilient than the season before. A sincere thank you to each of you for the hard work that you do. On a lighter note, it makes me so happy to see folks that I met in person in Savannah at our SCDRP 8th annual meeting, and so nice to see you here again. And a special welcome to our new partners. Thank you for joining us. So here's our agenda for today. First, I will introduce our new advisory board officers. Second, a quick summary of our annual meeting in Savannah. I'll show you some photos, hit some highlights, and then we'll hear from today's super speaker, Andy Fox from North Carolina State University. Next, a brief overview of member opportunities for the new year, including committees and upcoming monthly partnership meetings. And the final minutes of today's meeting will be partner sharing. So please prepare your regional updates, newsletters, important announcements, call for proposals, funding opportunities, job opportunities, meetings, webinars, etc. So, significant leadership changes here at SCDRP. As SCDRP becomes a larger and more formal organization, our advisory board just held their first official election for new officers. So, congratulations to the following new officers. The new chair of the SCDRP advisory board is Dr. Dwayne DeFries, executive director of the Indian River Lagoon Council. And Dwayne, I don't think is here yet. He had question and answer period prior to this, which he said might run over. I'll catch him later if he arrives. And Dwayne is based out of Sebastian, Florida. A warm congratulations to our new vice chair, Dr. Ashley Ward, director of the Heat Policy Innovation Hub at the Nicholas Institute for Energy, Environment, and Sustainability at Duke University. Ashley is based out of Durham, North Carolina. And finally, congratulations to our new at large member of our executive committee, Kate Morano. Kate is the Resilience Planning Director and Research Scientist 2 at the Coastal Equity and Resilience, or SEER, Hub at the Institute for People and Technology at Georgia Tech. Kate is based out of Savannah, Georgia. And I want to take a minute to say a special thanks to our outgoing advisory board officers. First, our former chair, Lindy Betzold, with the NOAA Office of Coastal Management. Lindy has been an integral part of SCDRP since its inception in 2016. Lindy has accepted a new position at NOAA as the National Resilience Fund Program Lead. And as this position is more national in scope, she has stepped down from the federal seat on the SCDRP Advisory Board. We thank Lindy for her 8 years of service to help grow SCDRP into the regional collaborative network that it is today. Thank you so much, Lindy, for your leadership. Second, a thank you to our former Vice Chair, John Phillips Bourne of the Atlanta Regional Commission. Also, due to this job shift to the public sector, John has stepped down from his private sector seat on the SCDRP Advisory Board, and we thank John for his many years of dedication. We will miss both Lindy and John and their contributions to SCDRP. Lastly, a special thanks to our former at large member, Lillian Ramirez of Sea Grant, Puerto Rico. While Lillian steps down from the executive committee, she will stay with us to continue to represent Puerto Rico on the advisory board. A sincere and heartfelt thank you to each of these individuals. So we are emerging renewed and reconnected from our recent annual meeting in Savannah, Georgia. The theme of our 8th annual meeting was moving the needle toward equitable community resilience to natural hazards. And I think we did move the needle together. And a big thank you to all that attended. Here's a short recap for those of you that couldn't make it. Our eighth annual meeting in Savannah had the largest attendance in SCDRP history. We exceeded our expectations with 127 registrants. And as you can see from the pie chart, we really had a wide diversity of professionals representing public, private, nonprofit, and academic sectors. Attendees came to Savannah from all over the US and Caribbean. The vast majority came from Georgia, one out of two, then followed by South Carolina, Florida, and North Carolina, and some traveled from states to the far north and from the far west. Thanks to AWR Strategic Consulting, many of us got to participate in an awesome resilience tour of nearby Tybee Island led by Alan Robertson. And a special thanks to our annual meeting gold, silver, bronze, and keynote speaker sponsors. Because of these sponsorships, we were able to sponsor 8 undergrad and graduate students and nonprofit representatives to attend our annual meeting. Our 8 scholarship recipients were outstanding. They volunteered as registration desk attendants, timekeepers, and microphone runners, and we were so appreciative to have them there. And these sponsorships also brought us an incredibly inspiring keynote speaker, Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley, and community champions from vulnerable communities in South Carolina and Georgia. So here's a photo of our session 4 panelists, these representing pairs of practitioners with their community champions, moderated by our keynote speaker, Gerald Durley. This was incredibly insightful. And I thank you again to all that served on the steering committee as panelists or moderators, those of you that asked questions and just came seeking ways to exchange knowledge and experiences to enhance resilience in our region. And during one of our super collider breaks, Reverend Durley pulled me aside and he said, "Heather, you know what makes a great conference?" I paused and he said, "Listen, do you hear that?" And I listened to the room, and it was absolutely buzzing with chatter, talking, laughing. And he said, "That's how you know. People at this meeting aren't running and checking email. They're not running away to the bathroom during the breaks. They're talking to each other." And you all were. You were making connections, building relationships, sharing ideas and stories. And we have so much to learn from each other. And I love how Ashley Ward, our new advisory board vice chair, put it. She said, SEDRP annual meetings are like coming back to summer camp. Smiles, lots of hugs, fist bumping, excitement to see old friends. And I really agree. It was so great to see everyone in Savannah, and I look forward to the next time we get together. So thank you for making SEDRP annual meetings truly exceptional events. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you today's super speaker, Andy Fox. Andy is a professor, university faculty scholar, and community engaged faculty fellow at North Carolina State University. He is also the director and co-founder of the Coastal Dynamics Design Lab and a fellow of the American Society of Landscape Architects. The Coastal Dynamics Design Lab is a university-based technical assistance initiative that addresses critical ecological and community development challenges in shoreline communities. As a licensed landscape architect, Andy specializes in the development and management of high performing public landscapes with expertise in the design and study of civic landscapes, nature based solutions, resilient community design, and land conservation strategies. The goal of Andy's work is actionable change in the context of the public realm. His sponsored project portfolio totals over $5 million, dollars, and this is so impressive. The outcomes of his lab's projects have attracted an additional $28.5 million dollars in direct to the community funding to implement resilience building measures. The programs and projects Andy has developed have been published in venues such as Landscape Architecture Magazine, the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post, Metropolis, Curbed, Architects Newspaper, Journal of Green Building, Water, and Sustainability. Additionally, his work across the realms of professional practice, teaching, and engagement have been recognized by more than 50 awards, including 4 National Professional Awards from the American Society of Landscape Architects, and most recently, a 2023 W.K. Kellogg Community Engagement Scholarship Award from the Association of Public and Land Grant Universities. Congratulations, Andy, and a warm welcome to you, and a big thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge and experiences with our partnership today. And now I will stop sharing and make Andy a presenter. Okay, Andy, you should now be a presenter and able to share your screen.
Okay, let me know if it pops up here.
Okay,
It's a little lag on my side. Let's see.
that's okay. Just take your time.
Well, it worked earlier for us, but now it's not. Now it's not opening. My apologies.
That's okay.
Here,
Let
let
me
me
see
try
if I
this again.
can, yeah, try one more time. I can also try to make you a presenter again.
Yeah, you may have to do that.
Let's see. We'll go through the process one more time. All right, so I'm sharing my screen. I'll stop sharing. Okay, changing presenters to you, Andy.
Technology.
I know we practice these things. We have tech checks over and over again.
Yeah, we promise everybody. We did this 5 minutes before everybody got on.
I have my fallback solution, which is you quickly share your presentation with me and I'll pull it up.
Be hard to drive. I'm not sure what's going on here. Sorry, everybody. My apologies.
That's okay.
After that really nice introduction, too.
Ah, I know. That's okay. Is it a small enough file that you might be able to email it to me?
I could
It
certainly
was
try that. Yeah.
it was PDFs, right?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with us, folks. Andy has beautiful slides. I saw them earlier. In the meantime, let's jump ahead to partner sharing. We can take advantage of this time as we work out our technical difficulties. At the end, we like to always do some partner sharing announcements from our region. So let's go ahead and do a few of those while Andy emails me his presentation and I pull it up. Announcements. You can also feel free to drop your announcements into the chat box. Any upcoming meetings we should be aware of? Lindy, I see your hand. Yes.
That the National Coastal Resilience Fund 2024 request for proposals is now live. And to give you an idea about this, the National Coastal Resilience Fund is focused on, y'all have heard me talk about it before, focused on restoration projects and work leading up to implementation of restoration projects that both helps bolster ecosystem services and habitat health, but also has co-benefits for human communities. It may be flooding abatement or storm surge dampening, and that's now available. And the pre-proposals are due on April 10th, and then we would find out in May whether you are invited to submit a full proposal. And then those full proposals would then be due July 2nd. So if you are interested, that is a fantastic opportunity offered through NIFWIF in partnership with NOAA, and they'll have a press release out on their website momentarily. So I'll share that in the chat as soon as that comes through as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to follow up with me or our partners at NIFWIF. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lindy. Roderick and Alyssa, if you don't mind, we'll save your announcements to the end since I see Andy has his presentation ready to rock and roll. All right, Andy, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Again, sorry for that little snag. Thank you for having me, everybody. It's always great to be able to share our work, how we do things from a design perspective in this space of community resiliency, hazard mitigation, climate adaptation. As Heather said in my introduction, I'm with NC State University. So we're based in Raleigh, North Carolina, but much of our work is in Eastern North Carolina. So today I'll be sharing some lessons, and I'll move through this quickly, and hopefully that'll leave some time for questions. And I'm happy to kind of drive back into the show at the end of the presentation to be able to take questions. Again, in the introduction, a little reminder about our goals and our mission. In the CDDL is how we refer to the Coastal Dynamics Design Lab because it's such a mouthful. We are a 6-staff initiative that's based out of the university. We are entirely self-funded, so we work as a kind of highly elastic group. We're all trained in design. We're all have masters in landscape architecture. 4 of us are licensed landscape architects, and the other 2 are earlier career, and they're on their pathway towards licensure right now. And we love to team and really think that that's the secret sauce to all our work, is building great teams to work on these very complex issues of resiliency. If you're not familiar with North Carolina, there are 3 predominant physiographic regions, with our focus area being the coastal plain, which is low, flat, crisscrossed by rivers, and highly susceptible to flooding. And so that's our primary kind of mitigation action or adaptation, is thinking about communities' relationships to water. Eastern North Carolina has, of course, a very long history, pre-colonial and colonial, in which the rivers were the highways. And so much settlement resides on or along these water bodies. This is a map of what was inundated during Hurricane Florence, which was a 1,000-year storm in North Carolina. And so this is our primary area. When we say coastal, we really mean coastal plain. Although we do work in the mountains, we work in the Piedmont, but most of our communities in which we assist are located in this region. We, of course, have coastal edge issues. So this is a map of a 3-foot sea level rise projection, which is not overly, which is kind of in the middle, I should say, in terms of projections in North Carolina. And so if you were to add the areas that are in the floodplain that have received water as recently as 2018, and then you think about long-term climate change predictions along the coast, that adds up in just the state of North Carolina to be approximately 7,500 square miles, which is greater than the size of New Jersey, just to give you an extent of what we face here in North Carolina. And then when you overlay that with the socioeconomic disparities that are in Eastern North Carolina. This is by census tract. The darker the shade of red or orange, the more economically distressed the census tract. And so in North Carolina, like in many places, we have the most vulnerable populations in the most vulnerable places as it relates to these particular flooding impacts. We've done larger scale assessments, looked geospatially across the entirety of the country, looking at FEMA hotspots. Certainly what we face in North Carolina is not unique. This is FEMA Region 4. We've assessed buying power in terms of ongoing discussions about kind of wholesale migration and other theories that we don't subscribe to based on the socioeconomic realities that people face on an individual and community basis. And so buying power being how far does your money go? If you were to desire to move, where could you move into based on least worth of a home in terms of this assessment? We've also looked at looking at this chart to kind of despatialize it and put it along a spectrum, what this buying power means, if you look here at the coastal Carolina example, 61% people that live in the coastal Carolina disaster hotspot, they have 60% buying power. And the last time I checked, if you were trying to move away from this area into a major metro like Raleigh, you can't buy 60% of a home. And so the realities are that many people are locked into a location based on their mobility, what their dollars can afford. And we really see this across the country, as most of these disaster hotspots are in rural, low capacity areas. What we saw in the 35 disaster hotspots that we assessed, 63% had median home values below all MSAs within their FEMA region. And so the ability to move towards a major metro that might be in a quote unquote safer place is not necessarily achievable. We also see this at the municipal level in terms of municipal capacity, that communities that are low resource, low capacity fall below their urban counterparts by a significant number. And so just within the FEMA Region 4, because that's most related to where maybe many of you are calling in from, is within the 5 disaster hotspots that we analyzed, 4 of those fall well below this median in terms of what the community funding looks like in terms of even implementing resiliency measures. And so with this in mind, there's kind of 2 prevailing thoughts about moving away from the threat of migration or adaptation is to evolve with the threat. Our work is really focused on the intersection and kind of calibration of these 2 ideas, thinking more about micro-migration as moving away from the threat, but doing so locally, and then placing a premium on adaptation in these local places that keep people closer to their social networks that build true resiliency. And so this is the preamble to what I'll show you in our project work and lessons learned, is because we are really focused on small, rural, low capacity communities. And our work is always keyed to these capacity gaps, whether it be funding, technical know-how, grant writing capabilities, grant administration capabilities, etc. And so with that in mind, the 4 kind of tricks, if you will, or the lessons from our work that I'll share today are about thinking through community resiliency through scoping, through scaling projects, through always thinking about funding, but also importantly, in terms of how do you communicate this information and how do you make it as user-friendly as possible, because so much of what we do is highly technical. The project that I'll use as an example is the Lumberton floodprint. Floodprint is kind of a portmanteau word. Think about a blueprint for flood, but also water leaves indelible marks that are unique to each community, much like a fingerprint. And so our work is highly tailored. It's bespoke to every community in which we work. In the case of Lumberton, everything that you see in the teal color, those are areas that were inundated by floodwaters in both Hurricane Matthew in 2016 and Hurricane Florence in 2018. And you can see South and West Lumberton were devastated by these floodwaters. Lumberton's a community of 20,000 people that is majority minority, and the household income is 37,000 a year on average. And so again, a lot of challenges. These are kind of your typical pictures that you see throughout eastern North Carolina when we receive these extreme precipitation events. And our work, again, coming in, understanding the localized trauma, both individually and community-wide, that we focus on an approach that a plan is not enough. We hear it all the time is communities don't need to be planned at. They have planning fatigue. They need actionable things. They need ideas that can be operationalized as easily as possible to actually build the change in their community. In Lumberton, the follow-on investments behind our work are just shy of $5 million, and since we've been working with the community, and all that's been at zero investment of capital costs from the city of Lumberton itself. So we work with them to write grants. We write our own grants to do the assistance work, and so that we have this very fine point in terms of the value of every single dollar, every single penny in a community. So with our scoping approach, we are focused on aligning deliverables with grant metrics. And so we understand what those maybe target grants are for funding and resources, and then we're working towards that consistently. In a typical RFP or request for proposals format, you might have a community that has identified a singular problem and they issue an RFP, go out and get a designer. The designer helps work on that problem, but it's only addressing one thing. So our work, we try to get on the pre-planning side, pre-design side with our partner communities so that we can identify multiple project types that then can work to couple together to, again, create a greater network of projects that are really getting at a more resilient, localized context. And so by shifting things forward like this, we can identify funding gaps, we can form project teams and deliver services or set up other professionals to be able to deliver those services that are tightly aligned with competitive grant programs, and they are meeting community-defined needs and opportunities, not things that we might see, but we're really working with the community to co-define and co-create these solutions. As an example, the FEMA BRIC program, which I'm sure all of you on the call are familiar with, I'll walk you through an example of what we did for Lumberton related to the BRIC program. We call it scoping with the scorecard. We do this for all grants, not just big federal ones, but local grants, statewide grants, is really understanding how these grants are evaluated. And in the case of Lumberton, these were some primary areas that we were able to focus in on through our work. Things like hydraulic modeling in terms of being able to illustrate risk reduction and resiliency effectiveness. So really modeling that and understanding the benefits. Then designing nature-based solutions. So what will these areas become that are part of the acquisition, the voluntary acquisition program, reforested floodplains, town parks, stream restoration projects, etc. Also through robust geospatial analysis, conducting a wide variety of vulnerability analyses that kind of take a community-wide approach to not just mitigation, but also access to recreation, gap analysis, who isn't being served through current parks, who doesn't have equitable access to nature, etc. Also, like I said, we're licensed professionals. We don't do the design work and construction documentation, etc. But we all come from practice, and so we understand how to operate a critical path of a grant and implementation project. So we're able to break projects down into their constituent parts. And then also, even though it's should be more points in our estimation because it's so critical to have the community on board, we operate through a robust series of community engagements. Elected officials, town staff, nearby residents, business owners, stakeholders, again, working with a wide variety of folks. And through aligning these things, Lumberton was one of the inaugural class in 2020 that was selected as a BRIC awardee. We've since had two more, so we're 3 for 3 in the first 3 years, and we did pretty well at the state level in terms of this current cohort that's undergoing federal review right now. So we're optimistic that we may have a few more communities in this program by the end of the summer when selections are made. The next approach is scaling, is the ability to understand how small projects add up to bigger change. So think of Russian nesting dolls. It's not necessarily project phasing as much as it is if you have a big idea for resiliency in a community, how do all these small projects connect and intertwine to really help build that more resilient townscape. So back to our project, which we called the Lumberton Loop. It was a 8.5 mile greenway that 99% of which is in the floodplain, connecting over 800 acres to community benefit. And so through our analysis, we were able to make all this work with only 9 acquisitions, and then be able to link it to currently town-owned, county-owned, conservation-owned, state-owned lands, etc. And all towards mitigation, with recreation being a key added benefit to the mitigation action. And so by scaling the project, we find these kind of hotspot areas where there's the greatest opportunity and greatest need. So we had 4 different project types and areas that all link up, and you can see on the right, these are all kind of parts of the program. And then what this allows us to do is, based on when funding becomes available, we can zoom in and work on that project, whether it's stream restoration, wetland restoration, if it's a multi-use path, we can start to kind of link the system together bit by bit, piece by piece through incremental change. So we also work at a variety of scales. So neighborhood scale, we don't just work at this townscape like the Lumberton Loop. We'll zoom into those project areas to scale, understand the existing issues. We'll start to look at short-term interventions. This helps the state and local officials maybe determine a voluntary acquisition buyout zone, work specifically with those homeowners for them to understand the risk and opportunities to potentially move within the community to a safer location. We also then couple this with other longer range projects that are happening in the area so that every project becomes a part of something much greater than the individual components. So these are transformational changes within neighborhoods by linking them to previous or anticipated other projects that might not be resilience building in the same way. It might be a transportation corridor, et cetera, that is been earmarked for project funding. And then zooming in, and literally we conduct a lot by lot, structure by structure analysis as part of our work. And this granularity is really essential for understanding needs, working with the local residents, being able to quantify the impact, and then also estimating project costs to be able to substantiate the project ask. Then we visualize, this was the previous condition in Lumberton. These homes are in the floodway, so not the floodplain, they're actually in the historic floodway. These homes no longer exist. They all signed up for the voluntary buyout program. And then through the BRIC program, we are working to revegetate and bring this floodplain back into its historic natural function, but also thinking about how recreation through the Lumberton Loop Greenway connects into that to the benefit of the community. And we do these visualizations assuming that both local stakeholders need to understand what we're trying to get to, this end state that is we've been working with them toward, but also understanding that those scoring the grants might not have a clear idea of what it is we're doing. And so literally a picture is worth 1,000 words. The next approach is funding. And we use a link and leverage framework in which we are trying to get to the economic realities that these communities face. And so Lumberton Loop was estimated, the components at the baseline, kind of the lowest price point, and this is 2020 dollars, mind you, was $2.6 million. But the entire budget for the city of Lumberton's Culture and Recreation Department is $1.6 million. And so you might say, well, how can you propose something that costs more than like the entire operating budget for a year, almost 2 years worth? And this is where being very sensitive to funding and being very strategic about bringing in the resources is key, because otherwise the best intended plan can actually do more harm than good, because it sets false expectations if you're not thinking in that financial mindset. So with a project this big, these are the series of grants that we've been able to basically cobble together, and in support of the Lumberton Loop, getting to the higher dollar amount that is the BRIC grant. And how we're able to use this link and leverage framework is the cost match for the BRIC grant was $655,000 was the minimum that we needed for the proposal. And by cobbling together other allied grants that are dealing with related but not they're not the same project, but they're enhancements to the project. We're able to exceed that at almost $750,000, and this didn't involve community dollars, and yet it's all going towards implementation. And lastly, talk about communications. In design, we feel very fortunate as landscape architects and architects that the visual aspect of the world is part of our training. And so the ability to communicate things out graphically is really key. But at the core of our work is the idea of making things copy and pastable to lower the requirements for communities that might not have staff to put together a grant. So we don't just do a report. We build basically the grant as the report. So the application's pretty much ready to go. In addition to that, we create these visuals so that community members can understand the risk. This is literally a quote from one of our community meetings in Lumberton, where a local resident, through a series of mapping exercises, was able to understand the likelihood that they would be impacted again. And they were in Hurricane Florence. So we could talk about the it's not if but when equation, and then really have open and honest discussion about what might be best for them and their family. We never tell people what to do. We just want to bring them the very best information so they can make a decision that best serves themselves and their families. And so this autonomy to make their own decision is essential. And we've gone in with some visualizations that are pretty dramatic in terms of looking at alternatives that might include all the houses in an area to potentially at least let's model all these homes and structures going away. And what we found is it gets neighbors talking to neighbors about very personal things, such as, well, yes, I'm going to apply. And then once neighbors can understand maybe that they would be living in isolation, that it might change their interest in at least applying and learning more about the program. So our visualizations are for local and town city staff to understand the changes, but we're also developing our collateral so that the grant reviewers can also understand that what's going on and try to get everybody on the same page. Ourselves as a technical assistance group, local stakeholders, elected leaders and staff, and also the grantor, because we want to make that as streamlined as possible. And so these are just a sample from our documentation series that come out. Our reports are usually in the anywhere from 80 to 120 pages, and always kind of working in a metric format, very graphic format too, to be able to visualize the change and what the investments are that are being proposed. Quick reminder again of the four lessons learned, or the four strategies that we deploy in our work. And already the information in the introduction, the very kind introduction from Heather, just this week, the pursuit of direct dollars to community funding, we exceeded 30 million. So there's another 1.5 million that went out this week for mitigation programs. These are our active floodplain communities. Some of these places like Princeville and Lumberton, we've been working in since 2017. Pollocksville is a BRIC recipient. Whiteville is a BRIC recipient. And again, I reference BRIC because most folks know that program and it's very desirable. We use that one as our bar because we know how competitive it is. But we're very proud of how we provide our service. And with this $30+ million, again, it's at $0. We've never accepted a penny from any of the communities that we work with. And I have to give a huge shout out to NCORE, the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency, because through grant dollars from them in the planning realm, it allows us to be able to work with communities at no cost. And so it really takes that network of folks all with the common set of values and a common aim and goals. And that's how we've been able to achieve the successes with our community partners to date. And with that, I'll welcome you to check out our website. Some of our floodprint reports are available for download via PDF. We also have a document called the Rural Resilience Framework that shares the geospatial analysis that I introduced at the beginning of this presentation. And it shares a whole number of strategies that are based on our experiences with small communities throughout North Carolina. So again, that's available for download. If you think any of this might be of benefit in your region and in the communities in which you serve. So with that, I'll stop sharing and take any questions.
Fantastic. Yes, let's devote the next few minutes to question and answer with Andy. You can raise your virtual hand, turn on your camera, raise your real hand, type your question in the chat. Oh, I see lots coming in the chat too. We'll review this, Andy. First question for Andy. Robert from Miami-Dade. I see you're up.
Hi, thank you for the awesome presentation. My question has to do with sort of the order of operations of presenting options and pursuing funding. Could you speak a little bit to sort of, avoiding that false expectation of how do you show people all the options before necessarily all the funding is approved, when pursuing funding might need you to know what those options are first? Sort of the chicken and the egg there.
Yeah, great question. And so we work on a model. If you're familiar with planning approaches or theory that goes way back to kind of the origins of GIS and geospatial work, are alternative futures models. And so we'll work openly and honestly with folks about just speculation, right? We're not saying this should happen. Let's generate 6 potential futures, one that represents no change and one that represents the most dramatic change possible based on risk reduction. And then we'll work at a gradient between there. What if these homes in just the floodway come out? What if we just work with the 100-year floodplain, 500-year, et cetera? until we have all that built out. We'll bring that to local residents, local leadership, and we'll talk about trade-offs. What does this mean? So that's how we introduce it. We don't come up with design options without working through a process of analysis, feedback, go back to analysis based on local feedback, bring back another round of potential features, and then it starts to dial in to then say, well, here is the kind of a la carte menu and what things might cost. So if A is desired, here is what that means. If B is desired, here's what that means. What do you think? And then we are guided towards that. And so by the time we get there, we've kind of hashed out, like, what are the limitations? What are the obstacles that come along with this, and setting expectations of what the challenges are financially, so that we can all get on the same page and say, yes, like in Lumberton, the city council adopted the plan unanimously, the flood print, and actually we're very proud in all our communities. All our documents have been 100% unanimously adopted locally to give it teeth. And we think that's a credit to a process that involves all those people throughout the process, so they know what they're voting on very clearly. So our process takes about 18 months. And so we don't jump right into design. We get there very slowly in most cases, because we're learning along with the community. And so I'll just say, focus on process, build relationships. All this is predicated on trust and being there over the long term.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert, for that question. And Brian Byfield from NCORE, I see your hand up.
Good morning and hello, Andy. We at Encore cannot say enough about how much we love your work. The communities have really adopted it. They've had nothing but positive things to say. Whenever we talk about resilience, I always go and get Mayor Bender from Pollocksville to come and speak on your behalf. We are actually at a point where there are lots of communities who are desirous of having you work with them. So I don't know if you can um, multiply yourself threefold, or your team, so that we can get everybody set and on the way. People actually do love the process. And I think Andy is being modest in sharing the level of success and awards that this program has won. We'll talk about Princeville and all the international awards that you guys have gotten, and if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that. But also just saying that it is a fabulous process that works and folks understand it, they can relate to it. And if we can get CDDL times 6, I think we'll still have work for you.
Thank you for that feedback, Brian. We would love to scale up. Again, for us, we have our own capacity limitations. We just became 6. We were 2, and then we were 3, and now we're 6. But again, a lot of that's about resources. So we do work. We're not funded through the university to do the work, and so that's something that I'm keenly interested in, other ideas in terms of other programs that have been successful and how they've scaled up, because we're not proprietary with the information. That's not our goal, is to hold on to it. We want to share it. So opportunities to share with groups like yours is really important to us. So again, thanks for the feedback, Brian.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Andy. And Andy and I were just talking yesterday about SCDRP has a goal this year to enhance all the ships, internships, mentorships, apprenticeships, and fellowships. And I think connection with your laboratory at NC State would be a strong one. It's a booming field in landscape architecture today, and really appreciate you coming and sharing with us, Andy.
Yeah, thanks so
If you
much for
would,
having me.
oh, absolutely. If you would, oh, George, I just saw your hand pop up. Okay, George, one more question, okay, and then we'll wrap up.
Sorry, I was just trying to clap.
Oh, that's okay. Too many emojis. Thank you.
And
Thank you, George.
we love folks at the CSI too. We wouldn't be here today without great partnerships from the Coastal Studies Institute.
Ah, fantastic. Andy, if you would drop your email into the chat box so that if folks have any follow-up questions, they can reach out to you directly. Again, thank you, Andy, for sharing with us today. I have a few more announcements before we wrap up today, so I'll share my screen for a few more slides. We are launching initiatives in our brand new strategic plan this year, and I'd like to highlight a few member opportunities. We are now recruiting new committee members to get the work done and advance the goals of the partnership. Each committee is comprised of advisory board members and SCDRP members in good standing, those with their dues up to date, and each committee is chaired by an advisory board member. So a quick look at our three main committees. First, the Governance Committee. This committee is responsible for further developing rules, policies, procedures, elections. So please let us know if you would like to join the Governance Committee, particularly if you have experience in nonprofit governance. The Partnership Committee connects SCDRP to organizations, develops joint efforts and initiatives between partners, and helps identify our monthly speakers like Andy. And if you would like to help the partnership diversify representation across professional sectors, types of work, or geography, please join the Partnership Committee and help us expand our membership and our member offerings to better meet our mission. Our last formal committee is the Development Committee. This committee solicits and generates the financial resources to sustain and grow SCDRP services. If you have an interest in how SCDRP receives and sustains funding into the future, please join the Development Committee. And here's a look at what we're going to be doing in our committees in 2024. We will work towards expanding and diversifying our membership, offering more resources and educational opportunities to our members and communities, developing our governance framework, and securing funding to advance solutions that address regional resilience issues. So what can you expect if you would join a committee? We hope for a one-year commitment from you. Each committee typically meets virtually for 1 hour each month. Occasionally, committee members might review documents or engage in email discussions. So if you share a sense of urgency to better prepare our communities for the hazards that lie ahead and to help them recover more quickly and equitably after disasters strike, then here's your opportunity to become more involved in SCDRP. And I encourage you to join a committee this year. Working within a committee is a wonderful way to build relationships and really get to know other SCDRP members. And between our annual meetings, committees are the main way that we keep moving towards our mission and turning plans into action. So please email us at scdrp@socorro.org to sign up for a committee. Sign up deadline is March 28th, our next monthly partnership meeting. And speaking of monthly partnership meeting, next month in March, we will be hearing from Susanna Tuttle, Director of North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. Susanna will update us on their NOAA-funded project designed to create networks of faith communities that are educated on the realities of climate change and able to serve as hubs of social and physical resilience in their communities. So this type of project with congregations is really groundbreaking, and Susanna and her collaborators are about 1 year into the project, and so it will be really informative to hear how is it going, lessons learned, challenges, surprises, etc. So we look forward to hearing from Susanna next month. And partner sharing time. Let's add, I think I see a few of you adding announcements into the chat. Yes, thank you. Please do. And if you have additional announcements, please email to scdrp@socorro.org. We will grab those and put them into our next newsletter. And lots of thank yous in the chat. So wonderful to share this type of information with one another. This concludes our February monthly partnership meeting. A very special thank you to our super speaker, Andy Fox of NC State, and thank you for joining us today. Everyone, have a great day.